President Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy have been talking a great deal lately about the U.S. debt limit and raising it. They just haven't been talking with each other about this. Both have expressed frustration with deep divisions over how the country should pay its already accumulated debts. McCarthy says, and this is a quote, Biden risks bumbling toward default, while the president says the House Speaker is on pace to become the first speaker in American history to default or lead to the default on the country's national debt. The director of the Office of Management and Budget, Shalanda Young, joins us now. Director Young, I wonder if you had a chance today to watch House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's speech on the House floor outlining the House Republicans' approach to the budget.
Major, I know the Speaker put out a plan in the last hour. We're, of course, looking at the details, but frankly, what we've seen so far, we kind of know what the deal is. He has outlined this. It would have draconian cuts for middle-class families and working families in this country, 22% cuts on things like Meals on Wheels, which are meals for seniors, veterans health care, education programs. Those things are absolutely targeted those who cannot sustain those cuts. So we are happy to talk to the Speaker about spending priorities and who you're for in this country, but we absolutely think that is the wrong way to go to grow this economy.
And to be clear, Director Young, you're willing, the White House that is, to have those conversations separate from a move legislatively to increase the debt ceiling, not together.
Absolutely. Let's remember, we're talking about threatening the default and full faith and credit of the United States economy, which would trickle into the global economy. We think that's irresponsible. And let's remember, congressional Republicans and Democrats voted to avoid default for the last president 3 times. What's different now? Who sits in the White House? That's bad for the American people. But you're absolutely right. We're happy to talk about values, who we should invest in this country, but that's a separate conversation.
So when the president says, as he has a couple of times, if not more than that he wants to see what the House Republicans' plan is, what constitutes in the president's mind a plan, an outline such as the Speaker put forward today, or something that actually passes the House of Representatives itself?
Look, I think what we see today, it's very clear that it is a contrast with where we think we should go in this country. Because remember, the plan out today would have the devastating cuts I talked about, but what it doesn't tell you, what a full budget would tell you, is that tomorrow Republicans would insist on giving tax cuts to the wealthiest Americans. What does that save? Is that fiscally responsible? Should we be doing this on the backs of working class families? Should we be targeting Medicaid and food nutrition programs? We think that's wrong, the wrong way to go.
So let me just run you through a couple of bullet points from the Speaker's plan. 1, return discretionary spending to fiscal 2022 year levels and limit spending growth to 1% a year. Is that a non-starter?
Look, let me tell the American people what we mean by discretionary. I actually worked and was a staff director on the Appropriations Committee who set these funding targets. What this means is programs that are funded that are discretionary are our community health centers, our nutrition programs, Pell grants, Title I grants, child care block grants. This impacts real people. And at a time where the president has led this country to strong economic growth, 12 million jobs added, record low unemployment, is this really the time to turn our back on those economic gains? We think not.
Next one, claw back unspent COVID funds that were designated to fight the pandemic. Is that a non-starter?
I'll just remind people, Major, what we're talking about, because it matters what these details are. You know, people in this town like to talk in macro unspent funds. What is that? We're talking about small business funds. We're talking about veterans funds. We are talking about pension funds for multi-employer pensions that help machinists and carpenters save their pensions in this country. So that's another one. We're happy to have that conversation when they take default off the table.
Next one, repeal funding for additional IRS agents. Is that a non-starter?
Look, this whole debate is about putting the country on a sustainable fiscal path. You know what we know about that proposal? It lets tax cheats off the hook. So people who are supposed to be paying taxes in this country, the wealthiest, are not doing that. And we're going to really take back the effort to go out and ensure that they pay their fair share in taxes and what they're supposed to legally pay. And by the way, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office tells you that actually adds to the deficit by $100 billion. So what are we doing?
One other bullet point I want to run by you. Prohibit President Biden from implementing his student loan forgiveness plan. This was not a part of what the Speaker originally outlined, but it is now. That seems to be an internal concession to some hardliners on the right. Is that a non-starter?
Again, when you talk about budgets, you talk about values. Who do you value in this country? People who are saddled with debt that are keeping them from home ownership, the American dream, entering into the middle class. There's a reason this president did this policy, and it's to make sure that we have an equitable economy that works for everyone, recognizing that student loan debt had become so burdensome that people were really struggling to enter into the middle class, and he decided to do something about it. So we're going to have this debate. We're going to have it over and over about who you value. Do you want to give tax cuts to the wealthy, or do you want to help these people struggling with student loans? Which one do you want to do? But by the way, before we have that conversation, take default off the table.
So, Director Young, Goldman Sachs came out with a note to investors today suggesting that it thought that the debt cliff could be reached as early as the middle of June because revenue collected by the Treasury Department is undershooting expectations. Is that a credible estimate?
One, it's best that Treasury Secretary talk about our revenues. That is the appropriate place. But also remind people yesterday was tax day. So there needs to be time to really analyze what the real situation is. And other than that, I think the Treasury Secretary will speak to that when she has a better sense at Treasury.
Would you say, Director Young, that we are approaching a period of time that can be fairly described as a crisis over resolving the debt situation?
Look, I'm an optimist. I've worked in this town on spending fights year after year. So I might be proven wrong to be an optimist, but I am. I know the majority of members I've worked with for many years know that even threatening the full faith and credit of the United States is harmful to the American people. You put the American people first, you know this is the wrong way to go. Brinksmanship, political gamesmanship is the wrong way to go. We have a process in which to deal with spending in this country. Let's deal with it then and not tie it to the unrelated basic function of Congress to take default off the table.
OMB Director Shalanda Young, we thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.